Good morning and welcome to Daily Kerfuffle with Carter and Keri on Unsafe Space. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, and it's a beautiful day in Texas. What's it like there in California?
Well, there's no clouds in the sky, so that's nice, I guess. But we got another notice from PG&E that we might have to shut off your power later this week. But I don't think it will affect us because we have a generator now, which we haven't used, but we'll still be able to do the show, I think.
When did California become a third world country?
Well, right about the time that they became focused on implementing socialism. So there you go. By the way, Keri, before the show, I didn't mention this. Can you show us your jacket? It looks very shiny and gold. I feel like you should be at a Roll-A-Rama in a good way.
Yeah, this is a cool jacket. Look.
There you go.
I also, hey, thank you to Nicole of the Mountain People. She sent me a microphone that she's no longer using, and it's awesome, and I really appreciate it, and it's cool, so I won't have that tinny sound today, hopefully. And
yeah, it looks like a good quality mic.
Yeah, and I found a tutorial on how to fix my old mic, so then maybe we'll have two microphones if we ever have another guest here with me. It'll be helpful.
Yeah.
If I can fix it. But thank you, Nicole. And that then it was making me think about we should do just again, thank you to everybody who subscribes on Subscribestar. The people who are, it doesn't matter if you're giving $1 a month or if you're able to afford, I forget what the high level is on there, but everything is very helpful, and so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it does. It means a lot. It really does. And yeah, someday mics will abound. There will be no mic problem ever. It'll be great. But thanks to Nicole in particular.
Someday we can hire staff and do sketch videos.
Yes. Oh, speaking about sketches, I'm actually overloading the term here, but Nicole also made a cool sketch of us during the book club, so that was pretty sweet.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. I look better in pencil than with pixels, so thanks, Nicole. Keri, I shared this article with you. I know you haven't had time to look at it, but there was an article in Wired. Here, let me put it up. This article in Wired is called "Empathy is Tearing Us Apart." And it says Americans are polarized as they've ever been. Could the problem be that we're caring for each other too much? And it's based on this study that was published in the Cambridge University Press, How Empathetic Concern Fuels Political Polarization. Now, there's a couple things I really liked about this. I can just explain really quickly. They basically took people and measured their empathy. Now it's self-reported, so I don't like self-reported empathy. It would probably be better to have them in a functional MRI or something so you could actually see empathy, not just self-reported, but whatever. So they classified people by self-reported empathy, and it turns out that empathy is triggered differently depending on in-group or out-group subjects. So if you have more empathy, you actually are more likely to not have empathy for out-group and have much more empathy for in-group. And the reason I like this study, or I think it's interesting, is they didn't
I've read about this before.
Yeah, they didn't. I looked at this. They did not cite Jonathan Haidt at all. But so it's independent, but it is very similar to what he has talked about with respect to morality in the righteous mind, and with respect to tribes competing, right, and groups basically group selection, and how the way I like to think about it, I won't put words in his mouth. So I don't think this is what he's saying, but emotions are tools that are useful, but they're not in and of themselves virtuous or not virtuous. Empathy is a thing that you can feel. It's a feeling. And if you have a higher likelihood to feel that, you'll still be affected by other probably evolved ways of being where you have in-group and out-group preferences, and you can activate that in-group and out-group thing by speaking to one tribe rather than appealing to all of humanity. And so if you have a lot of empathy and your tribalism is being triggered, that will also translate into less empathy for outgroup. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It makes
So,
absolute sense. And I think he even touched on, Jonathan Haidt touched on this in The Calling of the American Mind when he was talking about groups where even if this was the most surprising to me, but I guess it makes sense.
mhm.
Even if it was some trivial group status that you gave people at the beginning of the study, like they arrive for the study and you
They
say,
flip a coin
okay,
or whatever. Yeah.
flip a coin. You guys are group A, you guys are group B.
Yep.
Group A and group B are each going to favor and show greater kindness and empathy towards people who are in their in group, even if it was just arbitrarily decided when they showed up for the study.
And they know it's arbitrarily decided.
They know it's arbitrarily decided, but your brain still, that was the crazy part, your brain still lights up differently.
Yeah, which
Like
is fascinating.
for your in group. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I know I couldn't remember which book he talked about it, so thank you. I don't remember that it was coddling or because I read the other one back to back, but he talks about when there's this evolved, we'll say, like social cohesion desire or like tendency to want to be part of something bigger than yourself, right? And when you have speakers like Martin Luther King, for example, they trigger that by appealing to all of humanity and saying like we're all humanity, we're all part of this giant human tribe together, and that's kind of how they can try and trigger that emotion, that emotional response. But you can also trigger it in the opposite, kind of a much more divisive way, where it's like these are the people who we toss, these are the heads people and these are the tails people, and like they're the other, and you still get that response triggered, but obviously then it leads to different behavior because you end up with schadenfreude for suffering of the other a little bit, and lots of empathy for anything that happens to your own in-group. And the premise of this, so this was published, actually, this recent one was published in American Political Science Review, and their argument is basically that, well, it seems to be that they're saying that they're presenting the results, but the conclusion seems to be that this is part of what's happening with society. We're pushing this idea of empathy, but when you push this idea of empathy being virtuous, and you simultaneously are treating people as different groups, that will have actually worse effect than if they had less empathy and were being treated as different groups. So empathy is kind of a tool that can be used as a weapon if you're segregating people into tribes and pitting them against each other.
This is exactly what SJW ideology does, my old belief system.
Right.
It puts you in tribes, and it says, in order to be empathetic towards the people in our SJW tribe who are marginalized and oppressed, in order to be empathetic towards them, we can't have any empathy for anyone not in our tribe.
Yes.
And one of the things that started to wake me up to how misguided my ideology was right after the election, the 2016 election, I started to see opinion piece after opinion piece after opinion piece in the legacy media and the left-leaning media, same thing, that was a part of my echo chamber. And so I just want to share a couple. I mean, there's a ton of them. I just did a quick search while you're talking.
Yep.
Look at this. Empathy for Trump voters? No thanks.
Right.
Empathy for Donald Trump voters isn't just misguided, it's wrong. These are different pieces.
Yep.
There's like 100 of these.
Yep.
And the whole, I mean, you can read it right there in the headline. The point of these pieces was, sorry, I have to stop showing that. Does that work? Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
The point of this pieces was to argue that empathy for Trump voter, for the other, for anyone not in our tribe, empathy for the other necessarily means you're not empathetic for the people in our tribe who are marginalized. They weaponize it in that way. And I'm like, I was reading this back then. I was still an SJW, but I was not on board with that. And I had started, I guess this transformation I was going through had already started. I just really wasn't very aware of what it was yet. but I had been going to a spiritual center for a while. I was going to Agape out in Los Angeles, and then when I moved to Texas, I was going one out here. And I had just heard right before the election, I had just heard this um, preacher, Carlos. I'm forgetting his last name. It'll come to me in a minute. But I just heard a sermon that he did, for lack of a better word, a talk that he gave at the spiritual center, and it was about it had that Nietzsche quote in it. That's when I became obsessed with that Nietzsche quote. He was talking about, be careful fighting monsters lest you become the monsters you fight. And when you stare into the abyss stares into you. And that hit me so hard because it was right before the election, and I was starting to recognize how people on my side in my echo chamber were becoming hateful and monstrous and not empathetic, and all these things that I thought, wait a minute, I thought we were liberals because we have empathy, and I thought we were liberals because we have because we want to understand other people better and help them understand us, and and we're against hatred, and it really, I'm so grateful that I went to that service because that stuck with me for a while. And then after the election, I started to see all this stuff. I
Yeah.
just blatantly out in the open, hatefulness, hatred, dehumanizing Trump voters, dehumanizing anyone on the right, calling them all Nazis, writing off, you know, 63 million people as Nazi sympathizers. That's
Right.
insane.
Right.
That's insane. That's like, and when you start to dehumanize people in that way, then you can justify. This was in my first essay, but that's what led to my first essay. Which, if people are new to the show and haven't read it, it was called "On Leaving the SJW Cult and Finding Myself," and it
We
was
can put
kind
a
of my,
link. We'll put a link in it.
yeah, it was kind of my explanation of what had been happening with me, because I had a lot of friends in my SJW circle, of course, who were like, "What's going on with Keri? Like, what's she sharing?"
Right.
And so I tried to
Why isn't she hating on Trump voters? I don't know.
right. Why isn't she joining the mob with us? Right. Like, I'm like, this is not what I've signed up for. The hatred of people, and articles saying we can't have empathy for people because they voted for Trump. That's not what I signed up for. That's not liberalism. That's not open-mindedness. That's not love and and so anyway, I'm kind of going on a rant here, but I'm interested in this subject that you brought up because I've seen it played out in real life, and it's part of what pushed me out of it. It's part of what woke me up, was witnessing it. When you witness it and you're part of it, like in the knitting community, you see it happening, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't, your behaviors don't match what you say you're about. There's a
Right.
disconnect there.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And the other thing that has always bothered me, and I don't know if I can articulate this really well, but there seems to be worship of emotions. Like, empathy is good, and they ascribe a virtue to an emotion, and emotions are not virtuous or not virtuous. Emotions are, to me, philosophically, emotions are amoral. Emotions are a feeling that you have in reaction to something. It's the relationship between that feeling and the something that's moral or amoral. Like, hating a child molester is for his child molestation is a fine emotion. You need to have anger and hatred of evil behavior. That's healthy in society. Empathy is a fine emotion, but it's not always a great emotion. Having too much empathy for someone who is, running around killing people or causing a lot of problems, like, it's a tool that will then be used for one in group against another group. So I don't like this idea of like taking one particular emotion and either vilifying it or putting it up on a pedestal and saying like, this, we should all just, empathy is the end all be all thing. We should all be more empathetic. You should have empathy as a tool. If you're lacking the ability to feel a particular emotion, that's a sign of dysfunction. Absolutely. Yeah, like, I totally agree with that. But it's just a tool, and it's not a, you don't get moral points for feeling a certain way. You get moral points for like correlating that feeling to reality and figuring out what actions to take that are just, and then taking those actions. Feeling a way doesn't make you superior. There's nothing great about, I feel so much empathy for people. That's, who cares? What matters is what you do, right? And feeling, as this article is talking about, feeling a lot of empathy for your in-group actually causes you to take actions that are completely unempathetic and unjust for people in your out-group.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend yesterday. We were having coffee, and she was asking me about this. Well, why do I think, in a way, I thought what she was asking me is, why do I think people in my part of the left, and she's a liberal, by the way,
Like actual liberal?
yeah, but she's like a lot of liberals, the SJW ideology has crept into their world a little bit. And so it starts slowly. So it's like hard to put you, like people start to accept certain things, and then they accept more, and then it's like, oh, okay, I can be down with okay, mansplaining, I can be down with that. And then the next thing you know, you're like, I can be down with toxic masculinity too. And then I can be down with this concept and this, and it like creeps in.
Yep.
So yeah, but she's a liberal, and she hasn't been ensconced in the SJW echo chamber like I was for so long. And so she was trying to get my perspective on why people can be so vicious in it, because I was telling her about the knitting wars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that thing we've talked about before that I think I first heard Jordan Peterson talking about, where within your in group, right? Okay, so let's look at this SJW tribe, right? We all believe in this ideology, right? And we are here to protect the marginalized. I think that there's something interesting about so many of the most vicious SJWs being women, and a lot of them not having kids, because
Yes.
because it's this like this vicious protective mother bear quality coming out on behalf of the people in your in group who you're being told are marginalized and oppressed and victimized, and need help, and they don't have agency of their own, and you have to go out and viciously defend against. No wonder they are susceptible to all these very toxic, hateful opinion pieces in the media that are like, don't feel any empathy towards Trump voters, they're evil, like it's like they
Right.
fall prey to that, and they're like,
Right.
oh,
And but that's that I mean, that is what you would expect a defensive mother to do, to defend her children. Like if she feels like her children are under attack, don't feel empathy for the attacker. Like she'll be the vicious mother bear. And that makes sense.
and not all of
Just
them,
with the
again,
pride.
not all of them are childless, and not all are women. I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of them are women.
Mhm.
And that you see, and that's why the knitting wars was so vicious. It's a lot of women, and it's and not all of them are childless, but a lot are. I think of myself and a lot of women who, a lot of former friends, and some who are still friends, thankfully, in that world. And most of us did not have kids, and so it's almost like if they'd had kids, if we'd had kids, maybe it's like you're diverting that energy into your actual children, and trying to protect your actual children as you raise them and they go out into the world, instead of what can I place this on, like where can this biological urge go.
I think so. I think you don't have to start looking for vulnerability if you're living in a house with short people who are very vulnerable. It's like, oh, there's some vulnerability that needs to be protected, and it's related to me. I will protect it. But without that, it's not surprising that you want to find an outlet for who's vulnerable that I can go protect. That
I
makes
wish
sense.
we could harness all the energy and righteous indignation and vitriol and stuff of the female SJWs and direct it at child sex trafficking and pedophilia and all this elite protection of pedophiles.
That's one of those things that really bothers me about this too, is that uh, we do as a society just seem to ignore a lot of child abuse and child sex crime and all that stuff. But I know this is unrelated, but I don't know if you saw the two guards that were on duty are now being are they being sued, or they have charges against them?
The Jeffrey Epstein yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so two working class guards are going to be sued, and meanwhile the elites who we come on, the people responsible for him dying are the actually responsible. Nothing's going to happen to them. Prince Andrew just did an hour-long
Right.
interview, which we should talk about in Kafefi tomorrow, maybe, because I want to finish watching
I
the whole
haven't
thing.
I haven't watched it yet, so I should watch it.
Oh my gosh, it's just this elite, pompous. There's pictures of him with underage girls, and you know what he's saying? I don't recall. Maybe that photo's a fake.
Maybe not.
like, like, are you kidding me? And she's spoken out and said that he's one of the ones that she was forced to
Right.
have
No,
sex with.
I know. Yeah, she has. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein thing, we don't have to go on a down
Yeah.
a rabbit hole today with it, but it does just kind of remind me that like we've got this guy who even if he did kill himself, which I don't think anyone believes, but even if he did kill himself, like where's all that? Supposedly he had all this blackmail, DVDs, all this information on people, all these people involved, like nothing. We don't care. If you want to have you want an outlet for your mama bear child protective instinct, go after the elites.
Yeah.
Go after those people who have been asked questions like, where the hell's that evidence? Who were the people involved? I want to see all the stuff that was collected. Well, I don't actually want to see the video,
But
but
I want those people to be outed.
yes, I want to see who was involved. Yeah,
And
and have them
the thing
outed.
is, but see, this tells you more than anything that the resistance is not resistance. I've been saying this since my
Yes.
awakening first started. And I had friends going out to DC for the Women's March. And I'm like, what a waste of time. Look, I get, and even back then I was posting about it and I was getting a lot of friends mad at me, but I'm like, I get that you're going out there to rally amongst yourselves. It's like church. It's like you guys are going there. It's inspiring for you and it's encouraging for you and the people who already agree with you, but you're not doing anything to change anything and you're not resisting. I'm sorry, like you are part of the status quo. This, you know, if they were actual resistance, they would be out in the streets about the Jeffrey Epstein thing, but they're not, because you know why? The TV people haven't told them to be outraged about it.
Right. That's the thing. They're not resistance. They're useful idiots that
They
are.
are useful idiots. Yes.
Yeah.
The TV people are like, get out in the streets. Trump is a demagogue. And they're like, and they go and they do the bidding of the media organization. They do the
Right.
bidding.
The cathedral tells what their congregation where to go and
Yes.
signs to hold, and they go do that.
And they go do it and they get their printed signs and they put on their pink hats and they go out there and like, we're the resistance. No, you're not. You're the puppets of the establishment. What is wrong with you? Why don't you join? I saw a car yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm getting annoyed. I saw a car yesterday with a sticker on that said, you know, resist, join the resist. I'm like, I wanted to entrap, and of course, I'm not old SJW would try to pick fight. I was always on edge, but I really, a little bit of me was like, I want to be like, join the real resistance. Like, I'm sure you think you're resisting. You're not. You have a Beto sticker on your car.
Yeah.
Like, they live in the upside down world.
They really do. They really do.
And they don't. Sorry.
No, it's so weird because, especially as someone who's a voluntarist and been involved, wanted small government at least for a long time. I haven't been a voluntarist forever, but I have wanted small government for a very long time. It's funny to watch people protest that they want more, like, our overlords should have more power and be bigger. I'm like, resist. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like
yeah, let's
we want more people oppressing us. Really? That's your position?
They're out in the streets like, let's overthrow the will of the people and get rid of the electoral college. Yeah, resist.
Fascism. I bet, like, honestly, that's what I hear when I see Antifa, for example. I just hear them yelling fascism. That's what they want. Right?
They want
Don't
fascism.
tap us. Tell us what we can and can't say.
Yeah, let's censor people. Come on, let's censor everyone. Tell us what we can and can't read, guys. Like,
right.
That's why I want to go to one of these books. Burn the books with a sign that just says, burn the witches, burn the books. Tell us elites, powerful elites and media organizations, tell us what we can and can't read. Tell us what to think about everything. That's what their signs should say. They tell me what to say and what to protest against. They are not resistance. And you know what? Join the real resistance. Wake up. Why don't you look at what's happening on social media in the public square? Look at people who are being censored. Look at people like Mike Harlow, who's one of thousands who've been banned from Twitter for no reason. And you guys don't care because you're not part of the real resistance because you're not even aware of what's going on. Like, you are in the matrix. You're freaking asleep.
Well, because the cathedral understands how to activate their empathy in a way that's weaponized and get them to have great group cohesion and vilify outsiders, and they stupidly just fall prey to this manipulation, right? And they, instead of pitchforks, they have iPhones, but they're basically the Salem, they're the mobs in Salem. That's what they are.
Yeah. Look, so this is to your point about the quote resistance not caring about Epstein because the TV people haven't told them to.
Right.
here's something a friend posted that I shared a couple weeks ago. This was on November 6th. He goes, I gave myself extra time to get to work, figuring that the Women's March and the hashtag #MeToo supporters would be out en masse, blocking traffic, blowing whistles, wearing pink hats, harassing politicians and law enforcement, and generally protesting the whitewashing of the murder of known serial rapist and human trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. I assumed that they'd be rioting over the general silence of the mainstream media on matters related to the rape of what is likely thousands of women and girls by politicians and others in positions of power. Turns out I cruised right into work. Got there quite early. Strange. It's almost as if it's never about what they say it's about. Anyway, I'm going to be sure to avoid the Saudi embassy. No doubt that LGBTQ+++ activists will be out in full force there today and every day, rightfully enraged over all the homosexuals that the Saudis executed this year. Because it's never what they say it's about. And they get their marching orders from the establishment, and the establishment says, we're the resistance. No, you're not. You are the foot soldiers for the people who are in power. Like,
right.
Wake up. And I get frustrated. I know I'm getting a little yelly. It's because sometimes I don't know how to, people write to me and ask me, how do you wake people up? I don't know. I wish there were a button, but I don't know, but it's frustrating. Even that woman I complain about who tagged me in her thing about impeachment, but then deleted all of here, give me your point of view. And then when I did, she deleted all the comments. Well, you didn't follow my rules. Yeah, because your rules are stupid. Your rules are in the upside down. You believe that impeachment is important. It's not. And she's like, well, then make a case for why it's not important, like, or why it is important. She wanted me to argue the other side. And I'm like, I'm not on the other side of impeachment from you. We've already talked about this, but I'm like, I'm not on the other side. I don't care about it. That's the whole point, is it's stupid. It's a circus. The TV people tell you to pay attention to it, and you do. And I don't know what to say to someone like you, because you're watching the wrong movie. You're not.
It's lazy and it's easy to do. And I understand why people fall into it, because you don't have to think at all, right? You get told what to say. So you get a script. You repeat the words and you get adulation from your peers. So it's kind of a no-brainer. If you don't give a crap about everything and you're lazy, it's a no-brainer to just, put on the pussy hat and go to DC. Like, you get credit, you get a lot of praise, and you didn't have to spend any time thinking about any complexity of anything, and you didn't have to draw any conclusions on your own, and you didn't have to actually have any opinions that would get you ostracized or have you threaten your place of work or get kicked off of social media or anything. It's comfortable, it's convenient, it's easy, and it's pathetic.
I was just thinking about how, again, to the point that this is not the resistance. When I was in the SJW cult, everything I shared online, we've talked about this before, they're not engaging in thought. They are sorting through everything that they've memorized and stored as tenets of the belief system of what's correct to say. Mm-hmm. And then they're trying to pick the correct thing to say so they don't get, if they do say stuff, if they do post stuff, they're trying to pick the right thing to say so they don't get mobbed. And
it's like when you see the Terminator movie and he chooses the responses. Proper
They're just going through a file cabinet of things and saying, what's the correct response here, right? And they're not actually thinking, and they're not coming to conclusions about what they feel about things. And so the weird thing is, when you're in that kind of a cult where you've self-censored and you've locked your mind away, which I did willingly, you lock your brain away. There's a lot of projection, like we've talked about, and you think everyone else is doing that too.
Yeah.
And so when you encounter someone who's thinking for themselves, it's like, it's scary. You don't want to be associated with them, and you have to like loudly speak out and point at them and like that's just what happens. And so they are not the resistance. They are just speaking the same things over and over. I wanted to read something, if I may. I know this is kind of going a little long now, but
it's okay. This is kind of it ended up being meandering, but I like it. So let's keep going.
Okay, so when I was in SJW and I would post the correct things and I would be outraged about the correct things, right? You guys can look in your SJW circles and you can see this. You get kudos. You do it. You're getting kudos from people who are like, excellent, like other SJWs.
Right.
who are giving you praise. And if you, the people who, I didn't have a huge following or anything, but the people who did, they get more praise, of course, because you have all these sycophants in there who are then trying to get like, you're saying, and they want to be seen as being on the right, being the pure as well. And if you're one of the high priestesses or priests of the movement, that's like, anyway, everybody's, but it's all this circle jerk, like congratulation, and it's empty and hollow, and it's not meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, and I used to get some of that from people like, good, yeah, you tell them, and it's empty. Let me tell you, this is what Carter and I get now. Okay, so we'll get these fan letters, and I told Carter I want to start saving them on days when I feel lazy or like a loser. And I need to remind myself why we're doing the podcast, because it's important.
It is touching to get some of the letters that we get and some of the thanks. It's not just it's not the hollow clapping.
It's not the hollow clapping. So I really, when people take the time to sit down and write something and it's heartfelt and they're sharing vulnerability with you, and it's not the empty like virtue, like here's your claps and your cookies for your virtue signaling post. No, it's different. And this is something we got recently. Now, English is not this person's first language, so it's but it doesn't matter. I'm just explaining why it's written this way. Hey, Keri, I'm not in politics, and I really don't want to, because I find the unfairness and the made up stories very difficult to bear. That's why I really find it amazing how you can keep calm and focused when you get verbally attacked or have to deal with accused of this and that based on your opinion, where the accusation is actually just projection of the other party, for example. How do you deal with it when you have many against you alone? You know how I feel these days? This part makes me sad.
Yeah, that part made me sad as well.
You know how I feel these days? I don't want to say anything anymore. There are so many things I find unfair, and I don't want to say anything because the aggressive attack and lack of acceptance from others is making me go silent. That makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
I don't really know why I write this to you. I guess it's because I think you're strong and balanced. I don't follow every post and interview of you, but that's what I think, even if we might not share the same opinion about everything. So anyway, I guess I need to say that somehow my life is leading me to a new life where I'm not supposed to say much. Maybe that's the reason why I get attacked for my opinion from all corners of the universe. And every time I do get attacked, you come into my mind. So that's that. And thanks for being the way you are, even though I don't really know much about you. Have a wonderful day. That is like heartfelt. And that is a person who's struggling with this messed up world we're in and trying to make sense of it. And you know what I said, and I'll say this to anyone else, because I've gotten more than one letter like that, and it's not an empty kudos thing. And by the way, it's private. It's not even posted there so it can be seen the way that.
And a lot of times they'll come in with like they disagree about some things, but they appreciate the conversation, which is a much more authentic thing to say also.
Yes, they appreciate the conversation, even if they disagree, which is great.
Right.
And so what I said to this person, and it's like, it makes me so sad that people feel afraid to talk. And I was like, look, pick your battles. You don't have to argue with everyone about everything. It's, you don't have to be on a crusade. Like my friend Justin says I'm on a crusade against my old belief system. Maybe I am, but you don't have to be. And not everyone has to speak to the same degree. Not every, like Carter and I, we both gave up our careers to do this because this is very important, and because Carter has put a lot more on the line than I have. I don't have anything to lose. I don't have kids. I don't have, I quit my career, so I don't have anything they can take from me, really,
Well, you gave up your an entire career. Let's be fair. You could be
gave it up,
this
but
woke social justice person right now doing Hollywood shows.
Well, I gave it up though because I couldn't continue to do it in the SJW way I was doing it without feeling like a total fake.
Right.
A fraud, which I would have been, but also because like I might like to work in comedy again at some point, but I want to be able to do it without it being something that I'm afraid of people being able to take. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't take anything from me, so I can say whatever I want to say.
Right.
And so, but not everybody has to do that. And people have kids and they have jobs where things can be taken from them. And I get that fear, but you can't let yourself be totally self-censored. You have to figure out how to speak in ways so that you don't get to that place where you feel like it's your job to be silent from now on. No, that will hurt you. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. I had a friend who, I've told this story before. I just, the basic strokes of the story is that she was losing her voice physically. It was a physical manifestation. She told me, she was like, I think it's psychosomatic because I feel so silenced at work, and I can't say anything, and my voice physically, I've started having trouble with my voice, and I wonder if it's connected. And slowly over the period of a year, she started to find her voice and to speak up, and she came out as a Trump voter, and she works in entertainment, and she came out to her boss, who's like, would never have guessed that she was a Trump voter, and she was like, well, hey, I'm one of these people, right? And she got her voice back in lots of different, I don't just physically, yes, but in other ways, in her confidence, and like, she's an amazing, just brilliantly talented person. And she doesn't do a podcast, and she's not out there, like fight the culture war like we are, but she's in her own way. Yes, she's pushing back in little ways, and you can do that, and you can speak, and don't get to a place where you feel unhealthy. And now I feel like I'm giving advice, but like reading this, I was like, I want to cry, but
Yeah.
it's so meaningful, and that's why I feel that's worth everything doing this podcast, even if we never make even if it, and I think we will, I think we're going to be able to fund stuff eventually, and to have higher production values, and do other types of content, and do sketches and stuff. But even if we're not, just doing the podcast, talking from home, is worth it. It's totally worth it. And it's not some empty hollow, I'm saying the right thing. You don't get these kind of messages when you're saying the correct thing.
Yeah, someone, the way that I think about it, like, what do we have here? I look right now. We have like a little over 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, 2,088 as I'm saying this, according to YouTube. And on the one hand, I can be like, well, that's not much, right? It's only 2,000. And I know a lot of people think we should have more, and I appreciate that. I think we should have more too, but we've got to earn them. But we get to, like, where else could I have a job talking to 2,000 people at a day, talking about stuff, and like bringing interesting guests, like, we had Linda Blade recently, and we've had Zuby, and like, where else can we do that for 2,000 people? We can't.
Helen Pluckrose.
Helen Pluckrose, right? Like, so okay, so 2,000 is not a lot, but
It's a lot, I
if
think.
I was a college professor, I wouldn't have this much influence, right? I would have a class of maybe 100, maybe a couple classes of, like, so okay, we're not Sargon of Akkad, but this is making a difference, and it is something that I don't know, when I'm trying to feel more positive about it, we are reaching people, and look, for people like that person that wrote you, Keri, you're not alone. There's so many people. I mean, even look, I'm in Silicon Valley, where you'd think that everyone is a social justice warrior. There are so many people who feel like you do. There are so many people who are silent. They're afraid, but they agree with you. They want to speak up. And, you know, I think it's a lot easier to speak up a little bit at a time over time than it is to let it all. What you don't want to do is to let it build up a bunch of resentment and then blow up at work and
Yeah.
announce that you're a Trump voter and you hate SJWs. That'll get you fired. But, like, you can push back on, pick little easy low hanging fruit things. I wouldn't even push back on the most important stuff. If you want to start speaking, I would pick the easiest, least controversial things and start there, and see if you can get people to kind of come around a little bit through just being the person that you are, and being reasonable, and asking questions, and being authentic. But I know that sometimes it might seem like you just want to scream at the top of your lungs at all the pod people around you, but that definitely won't work. But you're not alone. There's other people. You're not alone. Half the country, half of the voters voted for Trump. So, and I'm not even talking about Trump voters. Like, you don't necessarily even vote for Trump. I'm just talking about people who are opposed to the radical left social justice
Yeah,
So
most of the people I've
invasion.
yeah, most of the people I've met and become good friends with this past year or 2 years of my journey didn't vote for Trump. They're like me. They're liberals who have been because liberals are the most afraid. The Trump voters aren't afraid. They voted for a lot of them are loud and proud Trump
Yeah,
voters.
fair enough.
The liberals are the
Liberal.
ones who are afraid. The liberals are afraid because this is supposedly their tribe, the left. But as soon as you start realizing as a liberal, this ideology that's crept in and zombified and cannibalized my side is not liberalism, you're going to feel a lot stronger about talking about why it's not. And like read up on figure out I'm still trying to figure out what kind of liberal I'm social liberal, classical liberal, I don't know, but I'm conservative on some things, but it doesn't just read up on that stuff and learn about it so you can talk confidently about it. And um but anyway, it's the liberals who are afraid, and it's the liberals who are starting to get over that fear. That's what's exciting to me. I'm like, every day I see more liberals who are getting over that fear. And
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
that is healthy. And to circle back to the beginning of the conversation, recognize when your emotions are being used against you. When whether it's love, hate, empathy, apathy, whatever wherever it is, recognize when your emotions are being weaponized. And one clear sign that they're being weaponized is if they're applied non-universally. So
Yeah.
if your emotions are being, or if you're being asked to apply an emotion in some way that's not universal, that's a red flag. So you can have empathy for marginalized groups, but if you're being asked to not have empathy simultaneously for other groups,
Something's wrong.
stop and think about it. Something's
Something
wrong.
is wrong. Like those pieces I showed you, what are the Vox? One is Vox, one's Mike. I mean, they were in even bigger, more quote unquote mainstream publications as well, that kind of stuff. Anybody who's telling you, hey, don't have empathy for this group of people, that's really, I mean, just look at that. Look at that on its face. That's something very wrong. There's
Yeah.
something very wrong with that.
Yep. It's yeah, it's authoritarian. It's the root of authoritarianism, right? It's
I even say, look, like put yourself to the test, right? I struggle with having empathy for really hardcore SJWs, but I know I should. I don't write pieces going, don't have empathy for SJWs, and
right.
here's why. In fact, I wrote a piece about like how to talk to SJWs,
Right.
in which it was like, you know, cultivate empathy, fake it till you make it. Like, so that's like, write them all off as evil.
Yep.
No, I believe their ideology is evil. I do, but you know, we go back and forth about this. I don't. I think it's important for me to have empathy for people that I strongly disagree with, and the people I most strongly disagree with right now are authoritarians on the right and left. But it just so happens that the ones on the left are really becoming mainstream at the moment at this moment in history. So that's the ones I'm focused on, and because I'm on the left, I don't know as many. I don't know. I know a
Well,
lot of authoritarians on the left in my real life. I don't know a lot on the right.
also the authoritarians on the left have run roughshod over the entire left half of the political spectrum. I mean,
Yes.
they control it, and that's not true with the people on the right. There have always been authoritarians on the right and the left, frankly, but the authoritarians that are on the right are um, vilified and not considered good. They're marginalized by people on the right. They're not respected. They're torn down. You know, people on the right don't like Richard Spencer or whatever. Like they don't.
Yeah. It hasn't run roughshod over the right. Correct.
Right. It's not part of their. It's not part of their milieu. But it is on the left. It's part of the foundations of the left side politics is run by the crazy authoritarian social justice warriors right now. Look at the Democratic debates. That's all you have to do is look at all the virtue signaling, all the lip service paid to social justice and intersectional ideology on that stage, and that's enough for you to see, or for you to know. So,
Plus, if anything, what's run roughshod over the right from where I'm standing, I'm looking at that schism that's happening there right now,
mhm.
is liberalism. You've got these young white identitarian people like now if he's not and I'm mistaking him, then
Mhm.
correct me, but from what the little I've read about him, this guy Nick Fuentes that people are talking about, Fuentes,
Hmm.
who's white identitarian, and you've got this growing movement now, which I think is a direct reaction to the alt left. You've got this growing movement now. Their whole complaint is that the right has become nothing but socially liberal, and that conservatism is out the window, and they're so it's weird, but it's like the authoritarian left has just completely taken over the left, but the authoritarian right is like this little tiny seed that's that's like, hey, our party's been taken over by liberal conservatism or whatever, and they're trying to take it back apparently. But
Yes.
it's like people who think, if you believe this lie that the media is selling you, that the authoritarian right is massive and huge, it's like, I don't understand what universe you're living in. Nobody pays lip service to that at all. Nobody of any respectability condones authoritarianism on the right, and we should not be condoning it on the left either.
You know, there's a there's a positive piece of evidence you could extract from this if you're liberal, and I think it's positive because I'm liberal on most social issues, and that is, if you look at the mainstream, 20, 30 years ago, mainstream Republicans were against gay marriage. They were definitely pro war on drugs. They had, they had a much, they probably were not at all, not at all okay with any kind of trans people at all, right? And now, even the people on the right are like, by and large, comfortable with gay marriage.
With
They
trans people,
they're comfortable with non-radical, Yaniv type trans people. They're basically saying, hey, you know, just be a normal trans person. Don't be arguing. Don't be taking pictures of 9-year-olds in the women in the dressing room, the girls' locker room, or whatever. And they're, and they question things like the war on drugs, at least a little bit. There's probably some other examples, but those are just the ones off the top of my mind that, really a lot of the social liberalism that you think of as the kind of religious right being opposed to, they don't have control over the right anymore. They're not mainstream on the right anymore. There's still some, absolutely. There's still some, homophobia and other stuff on the right, but by and large, uh, a lot of the liberal ideas have become mainstream and accepted on the right. So there's a victory there. It's just that, you know, there's been a loss actually on the left. The left has become less liberal.
the left has become
The
less
right has
liberal.
become
That's
more
why
liberal, and the left has become less liberal.
absolutely, that's this weird world we're living in, where the first Republican I've ever voted for in my life was Ted Cruz this election last year, because he's more liberal than Beto O'Rourke. And I had to vote for, I'm a liberal. I had to vote for the more liberal candidate. And what a weird world we live in, where in our race, I looked at what they believe in, and I'm like, well, Beto O'Rourke's clearly an authoritarian.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to vote for that. And I had friends who just, like we're talking about, the ones who just aren't paying attention, who are just
Pulling the
the
donkey lever.
yeah, the pulling the donkey lever, and the like I used to be. I'm not saying this with no empathy. I used to be that person. You guys know, I've confessed in the 2016 election, just 2 short years before last year, I think I voted for Kamala Harris I can't remember, but I think I voted for her because the way SJWs vote is based on race and sex, and because they're racist and sexist, and they think that's okay. And I thought that was okay. And I was like, which person is more oppressed? And she was running against a Latina woman, and I can't remember, but I thought Kamala was more oppressed, so I voted for her. How messed up is that?
Well, someday we'll have to have a discussion about how horrible democracy is.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. But I don't
This
do
has
that
been a
anymore.
long, meandering Kofefi. We
I
should
know, but
end
it's been
here.
good. Let's go. Goodbye.
Thank you
Have
again, everyone, for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Really appreciate the subscribe star people. We keep getting more. It seems like every week we get a few more subscribe star people. So very much appreciative of that. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and definitely, yeah, share the video if you like it. It helps us.